Take 5. And rolling.
Commercial fishing vessel survival craft requirements. In this segment, we're going to look at carriage requirements, servicing requirements, different types, installations, and how to check them. So let's get going. Okay, so what type of survival craft are there? Well, first, at the lowest level, we have what's called a buoyant apparatus. I think of it as an oversized life ring. It typically is foam. It is U.S. Coast Guard approved and is orange in color. It's required to have retroreflective tape and the name of the vessel. Additionally, these have to be set up to be float-free operation with a special weak link and a floating water light. Moving up, we have what's called an inflatable buoyant apparatus, and this is what I like to consider a convertible life raft. It inflates. It usually comes in a hard canister. It can come in a soft pack, and once inflated, it has several buoyant tubes to keep it afloat. Unlike a regular life raft, however, it doesn't have a top. It may have some tarps that you can use to cover yourself to protect it from the elements, but other than that, that's all there is to it. Next up, we have what's called a Coastie pack. Now, a Coastie pack is for a life raft on a documented vessel operating up to 20 miles offshore. This survival craft really has nothing inside. It has a little pump to inflate the floor and perhaps a couple of flares, and that's about it. The next level up is what's called a Solus B pack, and it will have a special pack with food, water, etc. And this is for vessels operating up to 50 miles offshore. Now, if the vessel is going to operate more than 50 miles offshore, then it needs to have what's called the Solus A pack. And that has a lot more provisions in it because it assumes that you may be out in the ocean a longer time and you'll need more equipment, food, water, etc. for survival. One thing you should be aware of, sometimes it creates confusion out there. Ocean service and Solus APAC are the same thing, as well as limited ocean and Solus BPAC are also the same thing. The carriage requirements are going to depend on several factors such as length, people on board, and distance offshore. One caveat you should be aware of is that commercial fishing vessels less than 36 feet with 3 or less people on board operating within 12 miles ashore are exempt from having to carry a survival craft. A state-registered commercial fishing vessel, all they have to carry is an inflatable buoyant apparatus. That's the highest level of survival craft that they need to carry. Now, what about documented vessels? Well, documented vessels up to 20 miles offshore need to carry a Coastie pack. If they're going to continue on and go up to 50 miles offshore, then they need a Solus B pack. And again, if more than 50 miles, they need a survival craft with a Solus A pack. Now, the life raft is going to be the same. And by the way, these life rafts have to be U.S. Coast Guard approved or Solus approved. There are recreational life rafts out there, and we don't want to get those confused. Every Coast Guard approved life raft will have a Coast Guard approval number. It's what we call a Q-spec. It'll start with a 160 point and whatever the series is for the particular manufacturer and brand. Now, you should be aware that if you carry a Solus B or a Solus A pack, it has to be set up for float-free operation. What's float-free operation? Well, what that means that if the vessel sinks and they don't have an opportunity otherwise to actually deploy the life raft, it will float up to the surface, and eventually when the sea painter ends up on the end there's a little extra line attached to a little cotter pin. It will pull the pin on a CO2 cylinder inside the canister and have the life raft inflate. Now, life rafts can come either in a hard case or a soft case. It's a very rare thing to see soft case life rafts in our AOR, but there are some, especially on smaller boats, where they don't have to be set up for float-free operation. Typically, you're going to find a hard case installation. Usually, if they want a soft pack, they're going to have to special order that. There's only one life raft servicing facility in our AOR. What they offer is a Solus B or a Solus APAC with the cradle and a hydrostatic release. 99% of the time, that's what you're going to see on boats in this area. For float-free installations, you could use either a hydrostatic release or a weak link. Weak links come in several types. Okay, here we have a wire weak link. Notice there's no tag on it. There's no requirement for this to have a tag because of the gauge of the wire that it's made with. We know it's going to break at 500 pounds of tension. Here's another type you might see, and these do have a tag, and that's because these are made out of fibrous material. Now what happens out in the sun when things are sitting out there for a long period of time? They start to deteriorate, right? So that's why these come with a tag. When it is purchased and installed, it is punched out for 2 years from date of installation. If you find one and it doesn't have this tag on it, consider it unserviceable. And if the tag has not been punched out, unless they can find a receipt for it to show when it was actually purchased, consider it unserviceable also.
Oh boy, here's the hydro.
Thank you, Tiny Coastie. Most of the time when you're out on a commercial fishing vessel and you look at their float-free arrangement, this is what you're going to find. A hydrostatic release. This is disposable. They're good for 2 years. You buy it and you scratch off the month that you bought it in, and then 2 years from the year that you bought it, you scratch that off, and that's when it expires. Notice it'll have a yellow piece here on top, a black piece here, and then a red piece in the center, and this rope that runs through it. And when properly installed, this thing will be right side up, so you can come right up to it and you can find the year and the month that it expires. If it hasn't been marked, then unless they can come up with a receipt showing when they bought it and installed it, we consider these unserviceable. Now, how does this thing work? Well, you have a line that runs through here, right? Well, inside here, you have a diaphragm and you have an air chamber here. And what happens if the crew's not able to deploy the survival craft and the boat sinks with it attached, then when the water pressure starts working on this diaphragm here, which is right here, it'll start pressurizing the air in this compartment. And as it does that, this is going to move up, and this here is a little trigger. And inside here, you have a little guillotine. Normally there's a spring here. We've removed it here for this demonstration. So when this pin gets pulled, this little guillotine will actually cut the line on here, and now it will allow the survival craft to float free. However, the sea painter will still be connected to this red piece. And the reason for that is if the raft just floats up to the surface, it's not going to inflate by itself. So as this is attached to the sea painter, as the distance gets greater, the vessel sinks deeper or goes out further, and it gets to the end of the sea painter, there's going to create tension on here. And that tension will pull the pin on the CO2 cylinder that will inflate the life raft. Now, what if it's real deep water and the boat just keeps going? Well, as the tension increases, this piece here, just like the wire weak links here, are designed to break at 500 pounds of tension. So when this gets to 500 pounds of tension, it will part and allow the survival craft to be free of the vessel so it won't get pulled under, or worse, yank the end of the sea painter out of the survival craft and deflate it. Here we have a typical installation. Now you'll note that we have the yellow piece here on top, the black pieces on the bottom, and of course the red piece here. And we have our chamber here that will cut the line in case the vessel sinks and they're not able to actually physically deploy it themselves. So we look here, we're looking for our year and our month that it expires, right? Now up here you'll notice above this yellow piece there's a pelican hook. And the reason it has a pelican hook on the installation is because you don't want to wait for the vessel to sink before you deploy your survival craft. The idea is you deploy your survival craft and you get into it before the vessel sinks. But in the event that something happens and the crew's not able to get to it, this is your fail-safe system. Checking proper installation. The black piece is on the bottom. It attaches to the cradle. The yellow piece attaches to your pelican hook with the strap that holds this thing down. And the sea painter is attached to the red piece. Remember, if this line gets cut, this will now float free to the top. And when this gets to the end of the sea painter, which is 90 to 120 feet long, it will pull that pin in the CO2 cylinder and it will self-inflate. If the boat keeps sinking, going down, then when you get 500 pounds of tension on here, this will break and allow the survival craft to float free and not be pulled under. Inflatable life rafts on commercial fishing vessels must be serviced every year. One exception is when they're brand new. It can go for 2 years when it's brand new. After that, it has to be serviced every year. Once expired, then it's a violation. If it's expired more than 5 months, then it's an especially hazardous condition. To check for current servicing, just look for the large quick check number that will be pasted onto the survival craft case. It'll have the month punched out and it'll have the digit for the year that it expires. It'll be a large number, so it'll be easy to identify, and also the color changes every year. If the case has a metal plate, don't go by that, because anybody can buy an engraver and engrave any date they want on there. We go by that big large quick check number on that decal that the servicing facility puts on there. Hopefully you found this video to be helpful. Next time you're aboard a commercial fishing vessel, you should feel more comfortable in checking the survival craft installation.
That's a wrap.
Yeah, I thought it went pretty good. Hey, what are you having for lunch? I'm having some fresh fish.
I'm not eating.
What do you mean you're not having anything?
I gotta watch my weight.
You guys are always getting ready for that weigh-in program business. Here, have some of mine. Fresh fish, high protein, low carbs. Here you go. Have some fish.
What am I supposed to do with this? I don't even like sushi.
Man, that looks delicious, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Oh, a little bit undercooked, I think.